We have breaking news on the Boston terror attack. 3 more suspects have been arrested. The charges obstructing a criminal investigation and making false statements to law enforcement. Their names are Diaz Kaderbayev and Azamat Tazhayakov, and the American is Robel Filipos. The 15-page affidavit reads like a spy novel. On April 17th, that's 2 days after the bombings, the 3 new suspects entered Tsarnaev's UMass dorm room. They removed a backpack filled with empty fireworks canisters, a jar of Vaseline, and Tsarnaev's laptop. The next day, when the FBI released the video of the Tsarnaevs, the guys ditched the backpack and the laptop in a dumpster, quote, because they did not want Tsarnaev to get in trouble. Also in the complaint, Tsarnaev was texting at least one of these guys, joking about being the bomber, saying, quote, LOL, and you better not text me. There's some truly interesting stuff in this affidavit, and then the lawyers came out. We're going to get to the lawyers' reaction in a second. And just comment on the new stuff that we're finding out today.
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases, and many of them unrelated to terror, you find people do really dumb things to help their friends. And I know we haven't really fully gotten the details of this, but based on the affidavit, it looks like they're just a bunch of morons, not radical jihadists. But they have been charged with obstruction of justice. I don't know if they're going to be charged with aiding and abetting. They could. But they need to make examples out of these guys. And I think that's what the prosecutors are doing. They are going to throw the full force of the law against them to say, you think about covering up a crime or helping somebody, you are going to eat the full force of the American judicial system.
And just stay on that for a second. Everything I'm hearing is they are facing 5 years. That's it. 5 years and a fine.
Get a stopwatch to see who throws the other one under the bus quicker, because that's what they're going to do. Put these on the table, and they're going to be throwing each other under the bus in 2 seconds to get off.
All right, Bob, those 2 guys that were with Tsarnaev that we showed that picture, that was from Times Square. The other 2 are Kazakhstanis, and you make a good point. These 2 guys were here on a student visa.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, that they were brought in on their student visa documentation and other things, and it may be that the 5 years is really an immigration issue and that they're open to prosecution beyond that for aiding and abetting. But, you know, it does raise the issue. These people were from Kazakhstan, is a 75% Muslim country, and it raises the issue again about where these people come from.
A very good question, and that's something no one has said yet. They haven't made any ties to any Muslim ties or any radical Islam ties, but we're certainly going to keep our ears on that. Dana, 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks, these guys have been floating around. Any idea what would take them so long to do something like this?
No, and in fact, so I'm concerned about the intel failure before the bombing, but it looks like I think that they were on top of it, but you know, it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence that it took as much time as it did to catch these guys, especially since they were tipped off about it before. They should have been watched immediately. And on the point about the immigration hearing and getting to go through all of these typical type of American legal jurisprudence, I want to go back to if you're either with us or you're against us. And if you are involved in terrorism, you too are a terrorist. I don't care about your immigration violation. You aided and abetted a terrorist of the United States that attacked American citizens. Therefore, you are X marks the spot. Because we are treating this more like a criminal situation when it is actually a war. And that's why that language, it's actually just coming to me now. I've been trying to be very understanding for the past several years about changing the language from global war on terror to overseas contingency operation. We have a war going on, and it's happening right here on our soil.
This is such a huge point. You know, someone stuck a microphone in Eric Holder's face at the White House Correspondents' Dinner and said, hey, why'd you Mirandize this guy so fast? He said, well, we got a lot out of him. We got what we needed. We did what we were supposed to do. Greg, I got to think there's still a lot more out there that we could be getting.
Well, the Vaseline question, what is that about? Either the guy had some kinky practices, I don't know. But I want to go back to your point. You know, when you look at how Benghazi was taken care of and handled, you kind of think about if it wasn't for the carjacking or the Boston police in this particular bombing event, the terrorists would be free and the creator of Cheers would have been arrested. This is what I have no trust in what's going on with our government. But I want to talk about the other thing, about the kind of the tone of these kids after this event. A few days after this event, there were dead people. There are people who lost their limbs, and they treated the blood and the guts and the gore no differently than if it were a movie. Let's hide their stuff. It was like a wacky prank. the wacky terrorist is not part of the diversity rainbow of college. But somehow it is. It's no different than the cross-dressing lacrosse player. How exciting it is to have these people as part of your friends. And I agree. They have to be punished, and they have to be punished harshly, not just simply for helping these guys, but for shattering the dorm room utopia that is going on right now that allows this kind of thinking to persist. It's disgusting.
Right. I'm not sure if we have this or we're even allowed to put this one up. We have a Facebook picture of Tsarnaev and one of the Kazakhstani, let's call them alleged conspirators. Do we have that? Are we allowed to put that one up? Anyway, all right, so they're not going to put it up for whatever legal reason. But here's the point.
Do you want me to act it out?
The FBI at least had this guy on a watch list before they even put Tsarnaev's video up that happened exactly on a Thursday during this hour. That was 2 weeks ago. I got to think they could have grabbed these guys and started, interrogating them at that point. Is the FBI at fault here a little bit?
I've said it before. I'll say it again. The parallels that this incident is taking on to Benghazi are getting more and more similar by the day. A failure leading up to it. Eric, I think they did a good job the day of. There's some criticism, but I do think they did a good job. There are questions, how did the one brother get away? But now we see, following this incident, there have been balls dropped in hindsight. There were red flags that were thrown on these guys. And look, just because the feds are going to throw the book at these guys doesn't mean the state can't throw the book at these guys too. So they might be able to get prosecuted on the state level. It's not double jeopardy. If they get a wraparound deal, the prosecutors might say, cover us on both levels. But they should have state charges, federal charges for what these young kids did.
Let's not assume this is the last of them either, by the way. But, going back to the bomber who was killed, it turns out that the Saudis had...
Maybe.
Wait on that?
Well, yeah, because the Saudis refuted this.
Well,
Saudis came out this afternoon and said they did.
Of course they're going to refute it because their intelligence service is not going to be involved in wanting to be pointed out as somebody who's turning in a Muslim.
Absolutely.
This happens all the time. We had this conversation before. There are a lot of Muslim countries that do provide us a lot of intelligence, but they try to do that in a way that they're not exposed because they've got their own Muslim constituency.
Let me stay with you here for a second. Eric Holder and/or President Obama over the last couple of weeks had said, this is an isolated case. These are lone wolves. These are self-radicalized individuals. Bob, a little premature on that, I'd say, no?
Well, I'd say, first of all, they're radicalized, yes. That we know. The question is,
self-radicalized.
Yeah, okay,
the self part.
It's you've got to ask yourself some hard questions about what happens in the 6 months that you're staying in the Soviet Union, and what gets two warnings from the Soviet Union about this guy, and despite the Saudi denial, my firm belief that the Saudis did it too.
Can I roll a little bit of the attorney for Diaz, Mr. Diaz, one of the Kazakhstanis, responding to the allegations? Go.
Diaz Kadrabayev absolutely denies the charges. As we've said from the very beginning, he assisted the FBI in this investigation. He is just as shocked and horrified by the violence in Boston that took place as the rest of the community is. He did not know that this individual was involved in the bombing. His first inkling came much later. The government allegations, as far as that he saw a photo and recognized him, immediately we dispute, and we'll be looking forward to proving our case in court.
Okay, well, this goes back to the joke I made about the Vaseline. You have to ask yourself, how did he know to throw away Vaseline? If Vaseline is part of making a bomb, that's baloney. You don't just grab a backpack after a terrorist attack that's filled with fireworks and Vaseline unless you're going to Bob's house. But you got to know that this is bad news, and it stinks because it reminds me of a bunch of college kids who aren't thinking. But you got to think we don't live in a world where good and evil no longer exists. It still exists.
Can I ban a phrase?
Sure.
Kid.
Kid.
I'm
They're adults.
Banning kid.
You're right.
If you are 18 years old in the United States and you volunteer to go and fight for our military, you are a man. If you are a terrorist or you aid or abet a terrorist at 18 years old, I don't care if you're 18, 19, 20, you are a man, you are a terrorist.
How is this?
They don't get to deserve to be called kids.
Because this, whatever they did, abetting them or aiding them after the fact, how is that any less of a crime than had they done it before?
That's why I like that. If you're with us, you're either with us or you're against us.
But that's the point they're making, or at least that's what they're being charged with after the fact, which means the maximum is, I believe, 5 years.
So far, but listen.
Those are minor charges, you're right. The ones they're hitting them with are not serious.
Students students, if they can't figure out
Yeah,
after this bombing,
with friends
that
like these.
with friends like these, exactly. I want you now. He gets a text from this guy. This bombing is taking place. By the way, would you go into my dorm room, get rid of my computer,
But that's the point.
and this other stuff? And Greg's right. The stuff that I use at my house, it requires a lot more than that to make bombs. But they had
But
stuff.
one of the statements was they were trying to help their friend. I mean, they pieced it together themselves, which is so weird. No one even
not
asked
possible.
these guys to dispose of this. They did it on their own. That's how stupid they are.
But that's why I think it's not possible that they didn't have some sort of knowledge beforehand, because I'm older than they are.
You're a grandmother.
I didn't know anything about Vaseline and
You're no
fireworks.
kid,
Like,
Dana.
if I went into someone's dorm room and I saw fireworks and Vaseline in a backpack, I don't know if I would be able to put all those three things
But
together.
you would stay
If
for the
these guys
weekend.
did.
But still, does anyone not think there should be some sort of additional charges that we can throw on some
I think
terrorists?
I think that
at
they should
some
be
point-
held
but here's the
silently for a
problem.
while.
Did we have to give them Miranda? Couldn't we
No,
have done the
I
same
agree.
thing? Get some intel out of them first.
What about
Maybe we
conspiracy?
find
Also,
something
and
else.
you know what?
Right.
Send their rear ends back to wherever they are. And you know what? You can go to the prison there. How about that? Let's, instead of, at Gitmo, what we could do is refurbish it the way Congress wants. They want money to refurbish it. Tell you what we should do. You get to choose the cell block from your country, okay? And we're going to make it just like the jails in your country. And then you'll get to go back there. So you arrive and you're from Yemen. They say, okay, then you get to go to cell block C. That's the Yemen prison. Have fun.
Are you volunteering to design this
Yeah, no, I think
prison?
this is a great idea.
I think you need to be a warden.
I should be. I'm
I could see you with
serious.
Jasper on a big chain.
Kazakh jail.
And aviator sunglasses.
Kazakh jail for you. Kazakh jail.
You know, this is a breaking story today. You remember how much we've learned about the brothers here in the period of time since the bombing? There's a lot to be learned about these guys.
Yeah.
Were, in fact, they Muslims? My guess is they were. It's so which church, mosque did they go to back home? Were their parents radicalized against the United States? There's a lot of things. I would not assume for a moment that these are just some innocent students that were trying to help their buddies.
Can they charge them with conspiracy? Because conspiracy would give them the same exposure as this
Sure.
Tsarnaev kid, which means
they
murder.
would have to prove that they were involved
I
prior
hope
to the
they
bomb
can.
blowing up, which
I
I'm
hope
not sure
they
they
can.
Can we just give you a pat on the back, Bob? A lot of people were giving you a hard time about suggesting the student visa thing, that maybe you put a halt on them and find out what's going on with the students who are violating their visas right now. Apparently, at least one of these two guys was violating his visa. Maybe both, but we're not sure. All right, good job.
Hey, can I point out one thing?
Yeah.
So I was watching CNN. This was a crawl, you know, the little thing on the bottom. It said, suspect quieter after receiving Miranda rights.
Oh, wow.
That's like, right, just to do, man drunker after getting drunk.
Drinking a
I thought
bottle.
the joke was when I was watching CNN.
It was a, yeah, what's at the
We gotta
gym?
go. We have a lot more